Well, welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. I'm Carol Livingston from Dynamics Connections. And on this episode, I talk with Kevin Pritchard from Fidesic. Fidesic is AP automation solutions for D365 Business Central and Dynamics GP. The AP automation world is crowded. So Kevin tells us how they are unique and also his thoughts about the future of AP automation and AI. So please join us as we discuss the future of AP automation. Welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. And on this episode, we have a special guest, Kevin Pritchard, who's the head product manager from Fidesic. And Fidesic does AP automation. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Carol. Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here and kind of hopefully talk about something interesting that I've, seen and noticed over the past few years. So for sure. Thank you.
Well, great. It'll be fun. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so background on me, believe it or not, I have been doing this for 14 years at this point. I suppose not specifically this job. Yeah, I was hired at Enliven Software, aka Fidesic, when I was 22, I think. Right out of college, I was in a entrepreneurship class that the professor of that class knew one of the owners of Fidesic. And he's like, hey, you know anybody in your program that you think would be a good fit? And he mentioned me, and I was hired before I was out of college. I was sales intern. I don't think I had a clue what I was doing at that point. Took me a few years to figure out the difference between accounts payable and accounts receivable, but I figured it out at this point. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I was thinking about this earlier. It was probably employee number 2 or number 3. So
wow.
It was very, very early days. I've been fortunate to really, this is my only quote unquote professional job. I joke that my job before this, I was a painter. So it's
good job training for this.
Yeah, it was a great college job for sure. Fortunately, I was in the entrepreneurship program at Michigan State University, and I think they did a pretty good job preparing me. So yeah, it's just been a long strange trip, but I'm happy to be where we are today. I feel like we're in a really good spot overall, and it's it's a different way to approach a career, right? You can get a job somewhere and quote unquote climb the corporate ladder, and I've been sort of trying to climb the other way, where I just keep bringing people in underneath to help flush out more roles and take more things off my plate as time goes on. So
as you go
a
up,
bit of a different approach.
Help develop someone else and mentor someone else. That's the best way.
Exactly. And that is, I always talk to my wife about this. It's like, that is by far the coolest part about this, is I get to find people that I think have potential and bring them in and plug them in and let them go and see how it goes. And, it's not, AP automation might not be the coolest job category in the world, but, I think I can help create jobs that are cool in the sense that they, respect your work-life balance and are an enjoyable group of people to work with. So, and that's worth a lot.
Well, it's nice to enjoy the company and the people you work with.
Yeah, and that's a big part. And, I was just talking to my marketing guy about this yesterday, and it's like, how do we better communicate that we all like working with each other, so hopefully other people will feel the same way. So that's our new marketing angle, is let's be less generic and be our authentic, friendly selves. So
yeah, well, and I find as I talk with partners, they enjoy the partners that they work with, right? So they're going to pick people they trust and have a good relationship with is. So that totally makes sense. So well, tell us a little bit about, you said you've been with Fidesic or Enliven for 14 years. So how long has Fidesic been around, and what products does Fidesic offer?
Yeah, so we've been around 15 years. So like I said, I was in there pretty early on the days. What our niche is today is we offer accounts payable automation in the Dynamics space. So that means Dynamics GP, Dynamics BC. We've been looking at F&O as well, as I think there's a couple plays there. But the thing that I think our focus is, and what I've been having the most success with, is the very specific niches within those markets. And what I've found is there are very specific niches in these categories that are being underserved because they don't fit, like, the $500 million a year sales goal strategies that these other companies are building, because they're just like kind of unique and have like a weird stack or like a weird combination of ISVs out there. And because everybody on our team knows GP and BC so well, like, we don't like make promises that are going to like fall flat during an integration, right? We're not going to like encounter and be like, oh, I've never heard of this thing and it broke everything, which, people come to me all the time with that story. So where we fit in specifically is those niches for companies that are in the service industry that have maybe a couple other ISVs that they're already working with in their stack that, they've tried to connect with elsewhere or tried a different solution. And, at the end of the day, it kind of fell apart on the integration side of things. So that could be Binary Streams Mem, that could be Nolan Intercompany, Nolan Bank Rec. I was just talking to somebody who uses Mover Suite, and they just had a terrible integration with some other company, which I won't name. But and then, I talked to the VAR for 10 minutes. We came up with a plan, and it's a super easy fix, but you have to be able to talk to somebody who knows like the ins and outs of how databases are set up and things like that. So, I think there's a huge market out there, especially for us, that is still underserved by like the companies that are only focused on like maximizing number of customers available. There's always going to be a couple people in the space that are a bit left behind. So I feel like that's really where we try to focus right now.
So what are your unique features? Like, how do you stand out from the other? Because it's a crowded space, that AP automation tools. There's plenty of them available.
I was thinking about this before we got on here, and it's like, it's funny because all the features like sound the same on paper, right? Like everybody has OCR, everybody has workflow, or not everybody will help out with payments, but everybody has something that'll help out on that side of things. To me, it's sort of like the combination of things that I think are what make us unique. And I always go back to multi-entity locations because that's been the thing that's been a real home run for us of late. And it's not like a specific feature, right? It's like all of the features that we have were built in a way to function that works collectively with a company that's spread out. So it's really easy to control like different permissions for users based on locations, or how things get automatically coded based on locations, how things import into your ERP based on locations. Say you've got, accounts payable people that work different regions. All you have to do is like set up the base setup in our system, and all these permissions like percolate down to everything. So it's not like you have to think about all these details while you're setting it up. You just tell us the rules and everything kind of works. So, we've got all the basic features that you think of when you talk about AP automation, but to me, it's like the stack of stuff and the simplicity of how it can be set up. That is what differentiates us from that, the other people that we've worked with.
What are some of the new things you're looking to introduce to customers to add value to their AP automation?
So, new things that are interesting to me that I've been thinking about, I think the payments side of things generally is sort of underdeveloped in the Dynamics space. When you think about like, oh, I want to pay my vendor and you're using QuickBooks Online, there's honestly more options to do that than there is in a Dynamics stack. Along with that, I think the advent of virtual card payments in the past decade or so has been a big change in like the small business world. I can't think of any reason why it won't be a big change in the, small to mid-sized business world, where the Dynamics companies actually play. That's a huge opportunity that I think we're aligning around, is giving people more options for payments. As great as BC is, and GP for that matter, it's still very traditional in how you make your payments. It's you pick your method, you cut the check, you generate the ACH file, and that's it. That is the whole game. And, I think a lot of the smaller ERP systems out there, or accounting systems really, are sort of a more dynamic approach to it, where it's like, I just want these paid, I don't really care how the vendor decides to get paid. Like it doesn't,
Yeah.
like I just want them to be paid and be happy.
Yeah.
It's like pass the onerous on to the vendor. They can manage their account, choose how they want to get paid. And beyond that, it's like choose when they want to get paid is something that exists in the smaller markets too, where a vendor's like,
Right.
I'll take the 5%. I just got to get paid today. And
Mm-hmm.
they can follow through and do that. That's not something that exists in, dynamic space currently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge opportunity that, we're trying to align ourselves around is be a super flexible payment method where, we integrate with your BC. You say, I want to pay these things, and that's it. You approve the payment, and we'll handle all the rest of that. We'll make sure that, your vendors get paid in the method that they prefer. And more importantly, if they pick virtual card or want to get paid faster, there's a possibility that you can get funds back on that. So you can actually earn revenue from paying your vendors, which is something that also hasn't existed in dynamic space really at all, as far as I'm aware.
Kind of more those enterprise level clients have high volumes. What about just sort of the SMB client that, they just need to pay their vendors and they don't have a huge volume, but they just need to get them paid and they don't care really. Yeah, and getting away from paper checks too, or outsourcing it as a service, that totally makes sense.
There's still plenty of paper checks out there. Don't worry. I talked to lots of people that are still sending paper checks. There's still people physically signing paper checks that are in charge of these, like, by my scale, pretty massive companies, and they're, rubber stamping 1,000 checks a month. And it's just like, what, what year is it?
Right.
Like, that's crazy. Like, there's so many options to pay. And, we're physically signing things with a stack of invoices stapled to the back of it. Like it's crazy.
How are customers really looking at solutions like yours to, streamline things and really, maybe they don't have all the staff that they used to, so they have to get efficient. Like what are you seeing as far as operational efficiency and improvements?
There's I have sort of two frameworks on this, which people approach it. And I think one of them is better than the other. And the one that I think is not so good is people they're trying to completely redo their process, which makes sense. And I think that's a smart idea. But it seems like in a lot of cases, they end up adding more complexity to their accounting processes than they're saving in the streamline process. And I pick on this example because I mostly work with service companies, and I know there's a time and a place for fully advanced purchase order processing. But I talk to a lot of service companies that are trying to add more procurement and purchase orders to their process. And if you really dig in and ask them why they're doing it, I'm not sure the logic makes sense, right? They want to have control over their purchases. Okay, great. But now you've got to manage your requisition process. That's a whole process. You've got to figure out how to triple match stuff. That's a whole process. You've now got an extra document you've got to manage. And there are cases where that makes sense. If you're in manufacturing, obviously you need to order X amount of the widgets. But if you have a formal approval process for your invoices, I'm not sure adding 2 more documents is really going to make your life easier.
Well, that's a really good point, is to maybe complicated it instead of streamlining it.
And it you can add efficiencies, right? You go digital and you add your efficiencies in, it's great. But if you also complicated the process while you're going digital and adding efficiencies, it might be a wash. So the second approach, which I, think is the better one, is okay, how are we operating today? Is it working to a degree where, we have the accountability, we have the audit trail, we have the things we need. Okay, what parts of those processes are actually terrible? Just fix those first. So just fix the part where you have to have somebody enter invoices all day. That's terrible. Nobody wants to do that. Fix that part. Fix the part where somebody has to sit and, manually mail things around all day because there's no way to do it in an automated way. Cool. Fix that. Fix the part where you're signing 1,000 checks like we talked about. Get rid of that process and then see how you feel about your process generally. You'll still have the same audit. You'll still have the same controls, but you got rid of the parts that are terrible. So that's the biggest option for efficiency in my mind. And that works like across all business, right? Like if you're not fixing the least efficient part, you're wasting your time. Like start with the part that's the worst, fix that, see how you feel and go from there, right? What can you do to increase your efficiency? Don't add a bunch of new steps. Is step
Well,
one.
and the rest of the world is getting a lot more digital, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you have a PO, you might not even receive the product before you get the invoice. So traditional
Exactly.
processing was, well, you get the product on a PO, you order it, you receive it, then you
Mm-hmm.
get the invoice. That today people are
Yeah, it can
getting
happen out of order, right?
electronic invoice. Yeah, it's all out of order. So how do you record that invoice and then later go back and do a match
Yep.
to what you actually received? Yeah, that's becoming more commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
And
And if you
it's
set up a great system for capture and then you have to file 3 times as many documents through it, like that's just
right.
not, it can be tough. And, I that's obviously what I pick on because I generally work with service companies that I think it's kind of a waste to do that with. But
Mm-hmm.
there are other types of examples out there where
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I always see it, and it's easy to pick on this too, which is like you hire like either a consulting firm or some big new like process person that comes in and just like wants to upend the process just for the sake of doing it. And like doesn't
Mm-hmm.
always end well, that's for sure. You got to find somebody who knows the process internally, talk to that person and figure out where things can be fixed. Don't just hire an outside force to come tell you how you should do things. Like you got to talk to your
Yeah.
people. Every business is different and they do things in their own little unique ways. And there's usually a reason why they do it if you like actually dig in
Mm-hmm.
and look into it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You said you work with a lot of service industry companies. Like what type of services? Are you talking healthcare services,
Yeah,
staffing?
services to me is
Like,
pretty broad. Basically, services in my mind is like anybody who's not in like heavy manufacturing, right? Anybody who's not
mhm.
doing like raw inputs into like product
Yeah.
output. So yeah, healthcare is a big one. Um, I'm currently in the process of like launching like my fourth or fifth long-term healthcare facility right now
Oh,
that for some reason, I don't know, it's funny how like just like things change in the air and everybody has the same idea at the same time. And everybody who's
yeah.
has long-term healthcare facilities has been contacting us. So healthcare is a big one.
Healthcare, that's another one that uses binary stream, right? So it kind of makes sense since you
Yeah.
work with a
Yep.
binary stream product for multi-entity.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's like companies that do like sort of I don't know what to call it. It's like half financial services, half like management help. So they help out companies with lots of locations and lots of entities. That's
Mm,
always a great fit for us. Nonprofits are another one that is like a service type industry, right? They're offering their profit services. Obviously, there's different types. For the most part, nonprofits aren't with
mhm,
raw material in widget out sort of operations. So that's another one that I think is always
mhm.
popular for us.
How about like hospitality, restaurants, gaming,
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of
TV?
those too.
Yeah.
That's definitely something like specifically in food and bev. We have lots of customers that own, franchises across state lines and things like that. Franchises, again, a thing that is more service
Yeah.
industry oriented. Hospitality falls into that too, places that own many, many hotels or things like that. That's always been a good fit for us too. So there's lots of
Yeah.
them out there. But, and again, these are like the niches that I feel like kind of get underserved by a lot of the other solutions. And in my world, it's always like you're spread out over multiple states, spread out over multiple locations. Let's get some efficiency around that and,
Yeah.
get you something that just works.
Yeah. Restaurants, franchisees, they often
Hmm.
have multiple stores or locations. So,
Yeah,
um,
hundreds, thousands. They add up quick.
so kind of talking about customers, do you have like a customer success story that you can talk about and why, that worked with your product and why they were successful?
Yeah, the big one that I like to go to is a company called MB2 Dental. They basically, how do I explain their business model? Their business model is they help independent-ish dentists run their facilities, right? So like when you're surprised you graduated dental school, you're now a small business owner. You're not a you're not a dentist, you're not a doctor, you have to run a business. And there's a lot of things that they
Right.
don't necessarily have training in or very good at, like the back office type stuff, get your bills paid, manage those sorts of business processes. That's
Right.
what MB2 Dental does. They help you with all of those processes. So their like prerogative from start to finish is like make everything as streamlined as possible and,
Okay.
make your
Yeah.
processes work as well as possible. They came to us initially because of the pandemic and they had to print some checks and that process fell apart. In talking to them, we realized that they had a lot of issues that, could be streamlined and optimized. And they've been a great case study for us. They fit the bill where they use binary stream multi-entity management. So they've got, if they didn't have MEM, they would have 500 databases in GP. Let's say that. So MEM has been a lifesaver for them in that way. And along that, they have one company in our system too, because we understand how MEM works and how to like keep everything separate in the ways they need to, but keep it combined in the ways that it needs to as well. They've been a really cool experience just to work with them. When I first started talking to them, I think they had like 180 offices, and now they have 550 or 600. So they've just been like meteoric rise of a company. And through that, like, again, I've had the experience to work with them directly and work with their partner, the Anchor Group, just to like really be involved with their process. And it's just, I don't know, I think it's interesting to encounter like, all right, here's when you're growing that fast, everything that is a small problem becomes a very big problem very quickly. So they've been a great resource for us to have ideas on how to improve our product too. That's where we get all of our product ideas from, which is where we get all our niche, support from, is we talk to the customers, we figure out what they really want and how things are operating and go from there. So like, just to like wrap up MB2 in general, they don't have to enter any invoices. It's all sent to data capture. Everything's routed out automatically. Everything imports into GP in the way that it should. And they can pay out of 550 bank accounts without having to touch a single bank file. And it's just really cool to see like all the little tweaks that we've made to make, multi-entity support really easy on the user side. I won't say they haven't hired anyone in AP since they started, but I'm sure they've hired a lot less people than they would have if they were,
Great.
downloading 500 files and uploading them to 500 bank accounts every day.
Yeah,
so,
if they're managing 500 dental practices, that's like incredible.
It's crazy. Yeah. And that was the joke when I was talking to them originally. They're like, can your system support this? Yeah, the last one we talked to, we got here and we broke it. Too many chart of accounts. And I'm like, all right, let's stress test it. So it's been interesting to, like, well, we have 1 million GLs. Is that okay? And I'm like, I think that's okay, but we'll test it out. If you're doing things right, GL codes have meaning, right? Like the codes are supposed to mean something. And if you can like extrapolate quite a bit from GL codes to like go into user permissions and workflow rules, and there's a lot of data there that I feel like is sort of under, like, yeah, accounting knows what all the GL codes mean, but they kind of seem like gibberish to everybody else. But they really do have meaning, and you can use them to make your processes like work better automatically. You don't have to change a workflow rule every time you add a new GL code. Just like make it inclusive of that, and it's a lot easier to work with.
The implementation cycle, what does that look like?
So the great thing about our implementation is we sync so much data from GP that relates to all this. Is you can build it in like a flexible way that adapts. So when you add new GL codes, well, those just show up in our system. So you can like have them flow into the workflow rule, into the data capture, and into the user permissions like organically. You don't have to really think about it separately. So yeah, we try to be as proactive about that stuff as possible. Obviously, it's not always possible, but again, like if you follow the rules of how the business is structured, a lot of times it just sort of is updated and works the way you would expect when changes happen. It makes growing a lot easier when you don't have to, burn the workflow to the ground and start over every time you add a new entity, right?
Oh, we added another location.
Well, start
back the drawing board. Start over. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in the future, like with AP automation, and you talked about payment and options there, but what do you think is going to be happening on the horizon with AP automation?
I sort of already talked about payments being ready for disruption. I do think that's, again, that's on the top of my list. I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming in the payment space. The thing that is probably still a few years out that's not payments that I think is getting closer at this point is quote unquote like AI rules and approvals. It's interesting because I'm not sure the like legal audit framework is all the way there on it yet, where it's like, well, who approved this invoice? Well, the AI said it was fine. It's sort of like a weird gray area that we're not fully comfortable with at this point, but there's too much opportunity there for that not to be the case at some point in the future, which is, you don't set up a rule that says this goes to a person. You set up a rule that says if this invoice looks funny or is off in some way, you need to route this for a person. If it passes the AI, like initial check on it, we should probably just pay it. And, like if you look at the statistics on invoices that get approved and paid, it's nearly all of them. Like you have to have that audit trail just to say, yes, this does pass some sort of like sanity check. We should probably pay this. But I do think in the next, 5-10 years, there's got to be more automated ways to do that, and it could just be based on variances combined with, where it came from and like particular risk. And
Yeah.
the interesting part for me is like figuring out how to make these tools available to companies that like can control the parameters on them, right? So like some companies are at a higher risk than others for fraud and things like that. They're going to want that slider all the way up on the like how much risk are we comfortable with? Not a lot. There are other companies where fraud risk is relatively low and the dollar amounts are low, where they might be like, yeah, let's just AI most of this. And I don't think we have a good handle on, or anybody has a good handle on how to control the difference between those two options and
Mhm.
make it
Yeah,
quote
and that's
audit proof, right? Like I don't think there's
and
any consensus on what that looks like yet, but there's too much opportunity. It has to be happening eventually.
yeah, no, that's a good point. So much is AI driven, on the
Hmm.
I see that on the payment side, on the AR automation, right? Be able to use
Yeah.
machine learning to apply payments to open receivables. Why wouldn't that be the same on payments and approvals? And that's a good point about internal controls, right?
Hmm.
Some companies will never get away from paper because they have to see every document, they have to sign off, they have to have, proof that it was, reviewed by someone who has authority and segregation of duty. But
Hmm.
yeah, when you get into like high volumes, like, if it's a routine payment for the utility, like
And
that's
it's within 5%
really
of the last bill, right? Like, why are
right.
we
And if
approving
it's not
this? It's,
wildly different than what you've been paying, then why do you have to
yeah.
review that? Yeah.
So it's going to be the future of like automating these processes is going to be navigating that gray area, because clearly
Mhm.
not everything should be auto approved, but clearly some things should be auto approved. So
Yeah.
it's building the
Utility bill,
tools,
yeah. It should
yeah, that
just pay it.
slider, so everybody feels comfortable
Mhm.
and feels in control. But that's not going to, those settings aren't going to be the same for everybody. They are all going to be unique. So that's going to be a big thing that uh
Yeah.
is, and that's the other thing that I've been thinking more about, just like AP automation in general, is like it's not as one size fits all as like it seemed like it was 10 years ago, right? It seemed like
Hmm.
there was going to be one company that tackled the market and everybody used it. Without some wild government mandate, I don't think that's the way things are going to work. All the use cases are so unique. The file formats are so unique. The business structures and, like organizational structures are so unique for each
Yeah.
company. It's finding the right one for your business as opposed to finding the one that everybody else is using and, is like says it's good. It doesn't, who cares if anybody else is using it, right? Like it's a matter of, does it fit your particular needs? And that's
Mhm.
what's been interesting for me is like there's a lot of AP automation out there, but I don't know, they're all sort of finding their niche, and
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
a lot for a reason, I guess, in some ways.
Is there one trend that you're seeing driving customers to come and talk with you and Fidesic about your solutions?
The people that want to talk to us are the people that have that sort of unique stack in either BC or GP that uses a couple different ISVs out there. And for whatever reason, the first big shiny option they picked didn't deliver. I do get a lot of people that either come out of failed implementations or tried something for a year and just are tired of pulling their hair out and want to try something else. So that's been what's driving my customers lately, is people that have tried other things and it was close, but it just wasn't quite there. And that is the great risk of automation generally, is unless you get it all the way there, it might not help. Like if you've got this awesome, sweet workflow and it gets it to everybody and they approve it and it's great, and then you get a terrible clunky file that you have to integrate into your ERP system that fails 90% of the time.
Yeah.
That wasn't, did that help? I'm not sure it did.
Yeah.
And so that's what's driving people talking to me lately is funny as it sounds, is them failing in other projects. And
you guys, it sounds like as an organization, you kind of built your business around listening to the customer and trying to adapt, as they have different needs. So
yeah, 100%. And there's like two schools of thought on how you should structure your product, right? It's people love to talk about the like, Henry Ford or whatever. They're like, people would have just said they wanted a faster horse, not a car. And it's like, oh, you're so clever. But like, I don't think like that's a great exception to the rule. And like, yeah, that is true in cases. But I think people use that as like a shield to not talk to their customers and be like, no, we know what they need. We built it and it's perfect. It depends, right? So there's like everything, it's a gradient between the two. It's sometimes you have to be bold and innovative and give people what they didn't ask for, but sometimes people just want what they asked for. And I feel like especially in technology, that market is usually underserved. People asking for things and big tech firms giving them what they want. It's more draconian than that, right? Like, here's the new process you must follow, we promise it's better. So I don't know. It's a balance between those two things. And I like to think that we're way more customer focused than most people.
In terms of helping people with their journey to the cloud, you guys have also been, instrumental to that, right? Like maybe they still have a legacy on-prem system, but they can definitely run their AP process that's cloud-based, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly. So it's the people that stick around on GP, I think they're pretty committed at this point, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to improve their processes. They just know that their GL is good and their process is airtight in GP, and they don't want to rock the boat on that. I get that, but that doesn't mean you have to like abandon hope of improving your process at the same time.
Right. And they can still take advantage of some of the modern tools out there, and that's where you guys can help them be more modern.
Yeah,
for sure.
And migrating to the cloud sounds all well and good, but that's another instance where it feels like the world decided 10 years ago that everything must migrate to the cloud, and like it's better, we promise. And it is better in a lot of ways. And don't get me wrong, there are certainly benefits, but I think some customer ideas and some things did kind of get left behind in that. And it's given us the opportunity to listen and pay attention to what those needs are and try to make that a part of our process. The classic example I always give is make it really easy to give people Excel spreadsheets. I don't know what they're doing with them. I don't know why they need to generate them all the time, but if you give people the ability to just like click a button and get a spreadsheet, they're so happy. And it's like,
yay.
Yeah.
I know.
Like, I don't know.
Excel, people love it. It is a really valuable tool.
Yeah, like we can spend all our lives trying to develop great views that help people. And, we do want to make interesting views of data, but sometimes you just want it in a spreadsheet and to sort it your own way. Okay. Like it doesn't hurt my ego that you needed a spreadsheet to see the data you wanted. Like it's
great. Yeah.
Just give them access to it.
Give them access to it. Exactly.
If you've got that customer who's that weird niche case that you're not sure how to help exactly or tried something else, I do recommend reaching out to me or reaching out to my team. And, you know, we've
Yeah.
been trying to make this the like top to bottom approach to everything, which is like, no, really, we're just trying to help. Like, really, if you bring us something, I am so happy to be like, that's not quite right, but thanks for bringing them to me. That
Yeah.
makes everything so much better than like, oh yeah, no, we'll support it, and then trying and like, I don't know, like we're trying to make that the whole like ideology nowadays of Fidesic generally is like, no, we're really just trying to help, and if we can, awesome, that's great. If not, I will happily refer you to a different ISV that I think can help, and hopefully they do the same, and we all make everybody a little bit better off, right?
That's right. That's what makes it a great community.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing I was gonna go back to when you were talking about how the like Dynamics community generally is different now. It seems like all the ISVs are way more willing to cooperate and collaborate on things than it was 10 years ago or so. It seemed like it was a little more cutthroat in the ISV space, but I don't know. I think we realized collectively that we all have to find our like niche in the space, and working together is generally a good idea. So I've had a lot of great calls with other ISVs post summit, and everybody seems really happy to just sort of try to come up with unique solutions to make the community better off, like keep Dynamics strong.
And I heard you mention that you have, special relationships and integrations, with Nolan and with binary stream. So yeah, all of those.
Depending on your framework, they might be competitors to us, right? Like it depends on your mindset on it, but I don't think people have been approaching it with that mindset, especially lately. And I love to see it. It makes it a lot better space to work in for sure, and hopefully makes it a lot better to be a customer in, where people are legit trying to get you the best help they can.
Kevin, thank you for joining us today. And this is our contact information. If you want to reach out to Kevin directly, you can email or call him. First, you can reach out to him through LinkedIn or fidesic.com. You can find more information. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us today and being part of our ISV Talks web show and being part of our community. So appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Carol. Greatly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.